The wind was a blur of sound and pressure, a living wall of force pushing against the carbon fiber shell of the Yangwang U9 Xtreme as it tore through the desert test track like a streak of liquid lightning, every grain of sand vibrating from a howl of electric fury that echoed across the horizon. It wasn't just another hypercar test, it was a moment in history, the instant humanity looked at the laws of physics and decided to outrun them. Engineers from every corner of the world had gathered in silent awe as the car's digital dashboard glowed with numbers that didn't seem possible, the velocity climbing past thresholds once thought unreachable for anything with wheels.
300 km, H. 360.
420. And still it climbed, the surface shimmering under the midday sun as the tires gripped the earth with an intensity bordering on defiance. The U9 Xtreme was more than a car, it was a statement, a symbol of what happens when innovation sheds every limit of tradition and embraces pure technological audacity. Crafted by a team that believed silence could be louder than thunder, this machine carried no roar of combustion, no growl of gasoline, only the otherworldly hum of raw electricity coursing through motors so advanced they almost seemed alive. Inside the cockpit, the driver's gloved hands rested steady on the yoke-style steering control, eyes locked forward as data streamed across the HUD like a pulse of light. The body was sculpted from multi-layer graphene-infused carbon, lighter than aluminum yet strong enough to hold against hurricane-level air resistance. Every contour had a purpose, channels cut by wind tunnel dreams, flaps that breathed, panels that flexed like the skin of a living organism. The Yangwang U9 Xtreme wasn't chasing speed, it was defining a new vocabulary for it. The project began in secrecy years earlier, somewhere deep within an industrial complex on the outskirts of Shenzhen, where a handful of engineers worked under the codename Project Xtreme. Rumors whispered through the global auto industry about a Chinese electric hypercar that could surpass anything Europe or America had built, but few believed it.
After all, how could V, silent and clean, op to dethrone the combustion-born monsters of Koenigsegg, Bugatti, and SSC?
But Yangwang's engineers didn't care about disbelief. They cared about numbers, airflow, and electrons moving at the speed of light. The foundation was a proprietary quad-motor setup, one motor at each wheel, each capable of independent torque vectoring so precise it could make the car pirouette on its axis if commanded. Together they delivered an absurd 2,050 horsepower, all unleashed instantly, no lag, no gear shifts, no hesitation. Paired with a graphene-based solid-state battery cooled by cryogenic fluid, the energy density exceeded anything on the market, feeding those motors with relentless current. As testing progressed, the U9 shattered its own records repeatedly, 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds, quarter-mile in under 9, and still the engineers whispered, it can go faster. The final configuration, wrapped in stealth, was built not to break limits but to obliterate them entirely. At dawn on that decisive morning, the desert air was still cold when the team wheeled the matte black prototype onto the track. Journalists weren't invited, only a handful of witnesses and high-speed drones would record the event. The driver, known only by his codename Echo, stepped into the cockpit like a pilot entering a fighter jet, running gloved fingers over touch-sensitive panels that came alive with cascading light. Behind him, technicians checked telemetry links, monitoring tire pressure, motor temperature, and aerodynamic response. The U9's AI control core, nicknamed Artemis, performed its own self-diagnostics, confirming that every subsystem was optimal. Then, in a voice calm and synthetic, it said the words everyone had been waiting for, systems green. Speed limiter disengaged. The track stretched for 20 kilometers of smooth mirror-flat asphalt, flanked by safety drones and heat shimmer. The first phase was simple, accelerate to 400 kilometers per hour and stabilize. The second, push beyond anything achieved before. Echo's thumb tapped the ignition pad, and the world seemed to inhale. The motors woke not with a roar but a vibration that passed through the ground like a deep note of power barely audible yet unmistakably present. He pressed the accelerator. Instantly, his body fused with the seat as 4 electric hearts detonated in perfect harmony, thrust pinning him so violently that even through the helmet he could feel the distortion of his own heartbeat.
Number blurred.
100 kilometers per hour in 1.5 seconds, 200 in less than 300 before he could form a thought. Air streamed over the car like molten glass, bending in perfect patterns around its curves. The wings at the rear adjusted dynamically, shifting pitch by millimeters to maintain equilibrium. There was no drama, no wheel spin, just an eerie inevitability, the sensation of a machine that had evolved beyond friction. Echo's breathing slowed as the speedometer passed 420 kilometers per hour, 450, 470. The surrounding desert had dissolved into a ribbon of gold. Then came the impossible, 496 kilometers per hour, confirmed by radar, telemetry, and satellite lock. The Yangwang U9 Xtreme had done it. At that moment, the car didn't feel like it was moving across the earth, it felt like it was transcending it. Air resistance screamed around the body, tires generated temperatures hotter than lava, and yet everything held steady, balanced in mathematical perfection. The onboard systems adjusted hundreds of times per second, reading airflow vortices, crosswinds, microvibrations from the track. The car's AI was more co-pilot than computer, learning in real time, predicting rather than reacting. Echo's mind flickered between focus and disbelief. He was living inside an equation that refused to break. When he eased off the accelerator, regenerative braking systems engaged with silent efficiency, converting kinetic chaos back into stored energy. As the car coasted down through 300 kilometers per hour, 200, then finally below 100, the desert seemed too quiet, too still, as though reality itself had paused to understand what had just happened. Engineers rushed forward, faces lit by a mix of exhaustion and awe. Telemetry confirmed it beyond question. 496 kilometers per hour, sustained for 8 full seconds, every sensor intact. Humanity had a new number to chase.